All right, welcome back to the Founder-Led Marketing Show. In today's episode, we talk with Jason Fried, the founder and CEO of 37 Signals, makers of Basecamp and HEY. It's a very special episode for me. We use Basecamp at our company, and I've been following him and his co-founder David for a long time. We dive into all kinds of different things: his writing process, raising VC money versus bootstrapping, what are the different trade-offs, prioritizing profits over revenue, how to make the most of your work days, the 40-hour work week versus hustle culture, and many more things. I hope you enjoyed this episode. All right, Jason, thank you for joining. This is pretty exciting to me. I mean, you saw the post. We've been using Basecamp at our company for 3 years. I read a lot of yours and DHH blog posts and all of that. So I don't feel like introducing you because I feel like everyone knows you, and I hate when people spend 5 minutes on the podcast introducing. Founder and CEO of 37 Signals, makers of Basecamp and HEY. You guys are prolific book writers, blog post writers, LinkedIners, Twitterers, and obviously you guys run a company I think a lot of people know and follow you. And so the topic I want to start with is basically VC versus bootstrapping. For me, I think one good place to start is you actually commented on a LinkedIn post where basically someone charted how long it took software companies to get to $1 million in ARR. And it's like Zip, Ram, Canva, Amplitude, Loom, Figma, and it's like all kinds of different time periods. And you actually commented, and your comment almost got as many likes as the actual post. And you said, make the same chart, but how long it took them to reach $1 million in profit. It will be a lonely chart, too much focus on revenue. You can go broke generating revenue. Who cares if you're generating $1 million if it takes 500 million to do so? I think this is a great maybe analogy to talk about VC versus bootstrapping, because all of those companies on the chart are VC backed. And so when we think about revenue versus profit, and a lot of these VC-backed companies, they go for revenue growth. That's what's being reported on. That's what they measure themselves by, revenue multiples and all of these things versus profit. What are maybe some of the trade-offs if I'm optimizing for revenue growth versus profit? A lot of the decisions are the same, right? I still need to build a great product that people actually want.
I don't think so. I don't think the decisions are the same. I think that's where I'm going to jump in on you. I think they're different because for a lot of VC-backed companies, the end game is an acquisition or a sale or some liquidity event in a handful of years. That's kind of the end game. And so it's certainly not going to be about making sure the environment is sustainable. It's not going to be about taking good care of your employees necessarily, because you may not need to keep them around that long. It may not even be about taking care of customers, as long as you can market share grab by buying a ton of mind share and market share through ads or whatever, and just get people in the door. You might have mega churn, but it may not matter as long as you keep getting more people in the door. There's nothing about generating revenue that's sustainable. It's just about generating top line revenue. And if it costs you more to generate that revenue than the revenue itself, you're not building a sustainable business. You're building a business that's going to continue to depend on outside funding to stay alive. Now, as we're seeing right now in this current market condition, a lot of funding is drying up. There's some funding going into certain things like AI, for example, but like standard SaaS B2B tools is just kind of not the hot thing anymore, right? And that happened very quickly. It happened like in a matter of a year. Rates flew through the roof in the US, funding dried up, and a lot of people are looking for money and they're not going to find it anymore. So what they built is this engine to generate revenue, but that engine needs more fuel, and the fuel for them is outside funding, which is now drying up, and so now they have nowhere to go. Now they're left with this husk of a business, essentially, a business that's going to implode on itself. So a bootstrap business, however, they need to basically make money as early as possible, because their fuel is they create their own fuel. They get high on their own supply, essentially. They need to generate revenue to stay in business. There is no other option but to stay in business. And to do that, they have to generate revenue and generate profit, I should say. So I think that the incentives are quite a bit different. The things that motivate you are quite a bit different. And I think in the end, I think customers will actually feel that, and employees will feel the difference of a company that's trying to stay in business versus a company, frankly, that's trying to go out of business, which is essentially what an acquisition is. It's like you're aiming to go out of business. I think that if those are the two aims, in business, out of business, the everything that's going to make up those businesses are going to be quite a bit different.
So it's almost like short-term versus long-term. What are the downstream effect on how you build the product if you're optimizing for revenue and an acquisition rather than profit?
Well, it depends, right? Because not everyone's going to do this the same way. But what I've seen, I've been around for 25 years, and I've seen a bunch of ebbs and flows in this market, in this world here. When people are just focusing on top line revenue growth, there's a lot more, I think I would call it manipulation of the customer. There's more gamification. There's more efforts on I would call it sleazy retention efforts.
Like when it's hard to cancel, or what do you mean?
Yeah, it's hard to cancel because they need to show revenue growth versus like this is not always true because of course if you're a bootstrap company you need customers to stick around too. But what I've noticed is that, and this is just purely anecdotal, but it's based on a couple decades of anecdotes at this point, is you can tell when a company is VC backed. It just feels like there's a different game being played. It's not like we're actually just trying to make a really damn good product and treat our customers really well. It's that we're trying to hold on to them and keep them. There's a different feeling there because they need to show certain growth numbers. They need to show certain customer count numbers. They need to show, year over year and month over month and quarter over quarter numbers that are different than someone who's just simply trying to stay in business. Again, retention is important for all people, but there's a different, I would say, intensity around the things that VC companies do. And they feel to me like they're trying to lock more people in because the metrics they're being judged on are different than a company that's simply trying to make sure the customers stay around because the product is good and they're treated well. So anyway, that's been my impression. But again, these are very broad statements, of course, and that's not always the case. But if I had to draw the line, I'd draw the line there.
I don't know if that's still true, but I think every time I get an invoice from Basecamp in an email, there's actually right there a link to say if you want to cancel. It was definitely at some case. I don't know if it's still the case.
Yeah, and we don't have any like retention engineers or there's no games to play. There's no one who's going to talk you out of leaving. If you want to leave, you can leave, and you can leave with your data, and you can come back as often as you want, and leave as often as you want. No one's here to prevent you from choosing to do what you want to do. I find that not to be the case in a lot of VC-backed companies. And for what it's worth, they might have higher retention than we do because of that. But it's not the kind of game we want to play.
I think I listened to podcasts on SaaSter with the founders of Monday.com, which is kind of like a competitor to Basecamp, right? And obviously, they're the classic kind of VC-backed, high growth, scale at all costs. We've all seen their YouTube ads 20 times. And my belief was always, because I'm super bought into this bootstrap thing, that you can't operate a company for years losing money and then suddenly make the switch and be profitable. But it looks like they were actually able to do that. I don't know if I get my numbers correct, but basically with the economic situation within 5 quarters, where they went from cash flow negative to cash flow positive. Do you feel like the bootstrappers, we're almost deluding ourselves a little bit of like saying, no, you can't operate in this way, and then suddenly makes the switch? Because it looks like they were actually able to make that switch and just be profitable.
I'd have to look at the financials right now, but I can tell you that like in 2021, Monday lost $126 million. In 2020, they lost $149 million. And the trailing 12 months is showing, I think, losses of $170 million as of a handful of months ago when I looked at this last. So, and their stock is down, from, at the high, they were at 371 and now they're at 132, right? So the market is like, and their earnings per share, negative 94. So cents. I don't see what you're seeing in terms of being cash flow positive. It's certainly possible. I don't know because I'm not looking at the latest. But if you look at like Yahoo Finance and look it up right now, they're negative EPS, almost $1 a share. They've got their business. We've got our business. They're running it their way. We're running ours our way. We've been profitable for 25 straight years. I'd rather be in our position than their position. I would not trade our company for theirs any day of the week. Now, they might have a bigger company. I mean, they certainly not might. They do. We have similar customer counts, actually, at the end of the day. We have 80 employees. I think they have... I'd have to go look. But hey, look, this is the choice they're making. What I would wonder is what's the stress level like inside that company compared to the stress level like inside our company? And to me, in my opinion, like that stress will play its way out to customers. You cannot not have that stress leak out on customers in some way, in the way that you treat them and the retention techniques that you have. when you're hemorrhaging money, you're gonna do things that you might not normally want to do, but you have to do. So I wouldn't want to be in that environment. That's not the kind of environment that I'd like to be in or work in, or create a company that is that place. But again, they're a public company, we're not. Some people might look at that and go, they're more successful than we are. It all depends. Certainly some people made tons and tons of money on the IPO. All those things are things, but like, how do you want to show up at work every day? That's sort of the thing that we are focused on.
Can you have a meaningful impact on a 40-hour work week? And this is a personal crisis that I'm dealing with. I'm 27. I feel like I'm at that age where I should be building something big. I'm ambitious. I want to have an impact. But at the same time, I have a wife. I have a 9-month-old daughter. Turns out I actually like spending time with them, and I do want to spend time with them. I have hobbies. I like reading. So I'm like, there's this side of hustle culture, and almost anyone in the software space that you listen to, whether it's Jason Lemkin from SaaSter, whether it's any of the founders of the companies that are on the podcast, whether it's Harry Stebbings, Nathan Lutka, it's all about like hustle, 24/7, work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. You need to answer emails within 3 minutes that they come in or 30 seconds that they come in. You need to always be responsive. You need to sacrifice your personal life and hobbies if you want to build a meaningful company. And you guys, to me, are this kind of beacon of, yes, you don't have the hundreds of tens of thousands of employees, but you guys seem to have a disproportionate impact on the industry and on people. And you guys are an inspiration to people, and people read your books and listen to you. So maybe you work 12 hours a day. I don't know.
Nope. About 40. I mean, here's the thing. Like, I don't know. I don't see what you need to do. Like, I don't understand why you need to put in insane number of hours. Like, what exactly are you doing all day long that says you can't get great work done in 8 hours? That's the question I would actually have. Frankly, like, if you can get a good 4 or 5 hours of really good work in a day, I think that's pretty good. So what are you doing with all the other time that you have to, that you're spending? And why is this adding up to 10, 12, 14-hour days or whatever it might, like, over the course of days and weeks and months and years? Like, what are you doing? Why are you so busy? That's the question I would have. What are you so busy doing? I'm focused on building things for customers, charging the money for it, making more money than we spend. That doesn't take an outsized number of hours. That takes a good amount of focused work in a given day. Everyone does that here. And with that, you can build something great. Like, you don't need to spend an inordinate number of hours and feel like everything else in your life has to suffer. I just don't understand why people feel like they have to do that. And then, of course, it's celebrated, to your point, with all the people you were explaining. They're celebrating it and hustling, because if you're not making it, it's really easy to tell someone, well, you're just not working hard enough, dude. You just got to bust your ass harder. And if you do that, then I don't think that that's true. You can bust your ass doing the wrong thing, and bust your ass and triple bust your ass doing the wrong thing. Like, working extra hard on the wrong thing, or working extra hard on in the wrong way, or working extra hard on something that frankly just isn't going to work no matter what, isn't going to get you anywhere. All this stuff is hard. Building something well is hard, and building something poorly is hard. It's hard to do any of this stuff. You got to make sure that you're focused on the right things. And to me, that's the more important focus here rather than the quantity. Although, of course, to your point, you've got a wife, you've got a kid, you've got hobbies. You've got to make time for those things too. Because what does it really matter if your business is wildly successful if your life falls apart? I mean, for some people, that's fine. It doesn't sound like it's fine for you. It's certainly not fine for me either. And it doesn't have to be fine for others. You don't have to do that. So I'm a big fan of basically 8-8-8, is what I like to call it. 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of work, and 8 hours of life. Of course, life encompasses all of these things. But you can do plenty well that way.
I guess the argument is that, if you work 8 hours, that's what everyone else is doing. So even if you work smart for these 8 hours and you prioritize the right things, there's someone else who's working smart and prioritizing the right things for 12 hours. And so...
Okay, well, let's take that to the logical extreme. How many hours are there in a day maximum?
24.
Right. You don't get to have 32. No one else gets to have 48. So, like, assume everyone's working 12. Assume everyone's working 14. Assume everyone's working 18. Like, there has to be some differentiation here. And part of this is I mean, sometimes you're going to work your ass off and nothing's going to happen. This can happen. Business is hard, and a lot of it is luck, a lot of it is timing, a lot of it is chance, a lot of it is things you can't control. There's a lot of stuff that is not up to you, actually. But hey, everyone has the same limits on themselves. And so, the argument that someone else is working while you're sleeping, well, okay, then go ahead and don't sleep and see how long that lasts. Like all these arguments, they fall down so fast because there's not that much headroom here, actually. You can't work more than you can work. And everyone else is out there doing the same thing. So this is about all the other things. It's not about how many hours you put in. It's first of all, like, how's your product? How do you talk about your product? How do you treat your customers? How do you treat your employees? What's your pricing look like? What's your cost structure look like? All these things which have nothing to do with hours. Now, you can get all that stuff right and still not make it. Most businesses don't make it. So all that can be true as well. But to go, if I only worked an extra 3 or 4 hours a day, we would have made it, I think it's a false narrative, but it's an easy one to say because you didn't do it. So it's like, well, you just didn't work hard enough. That's sort of the answer. And I think that's an unfortunate line of thought, personally.
But I mean, you guys are contrarian in that point. I feel like you guys are really more or less the only people that are here loudly that say you don't need to work really hard. And so
I don't like the word hard, if you don't mind me just pushing back in that one word.
I mean, a lot of hours.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. I don't know. I think there's a lot of silent people out there who are just putting in their 40-hour days or 40-hour weeks, sorry, and making progress. But that doesn't. It's not as exciting as saying just work your ass off, man. Just work. You're not working hard enough. You're not working hard. I mean, motivational speakers are very popular for a reason. Like, you're just not working hard enough. Work harder. If you work harder, just work harder. I think a lot of people are silent and just working and getting their work done and moving on. But at the end of the day, you've got to figure out what works for you. If working 14 hours a day works for you, work 14 hours a day. But if it's not working for you, or 12 hours, if it's not working for you, don't think like, I just had to work 15. If I just would have put in 15, that would have been the difference. That's the problem. That's what I'm trying to kind of get at, is that the problem with just hours is that you're always like, wow, if I just would have put that one more hour in. I don't think so.
Can you talk to me about the texture of a good idea?
Good ideas are interesting. They do have a texture to them. They feel like something, and they're smooth. I mean, to me, there's actually a couple different ways of thinking about this, but things sort of flow effortlessly. They feel smooth. They don't burn your hands if you hold on to them. There's a smoothness to them, and it's something that you feel when you're working on something, and it's sort of like this groove that you settle into. And that's at least how it comes to me. If I feel like I'm struggling too much with something and wrestling too much with something, it's probably not a good idea. I'd rather just kind of let that go and let something else come up. I think that sometimes struggle is glorified. And it's not that there's different kinds of struggle. There's sometimes you have something here and you're not turning it in the right direction or looking at it from the right angle. That's sort of a creative curiosity, and there's a little bit of struggle in that. But I mean, if something's just pulling you totally in an opposite direction, and you just simply don't have the energy to pull it with you to get it going, I just would let it go and let it just run away, and find that next thing that comes to you. And I find this to be true with writing and a lot of different things, which is basically if it's really hard, I just stop doing it. And I wait for something else that seems easy. So I'll be writing a piece, for example, and I'll have this idea in my head and I'll start writing it. And if I don't finish it in 5 to 10 minutes, I'll just stop and usually throw it out and start over. So I don't struggle with that thing that I wrote, the bad thing that I wrote, to try to make it better. I'd rather just start over from scratch and try it again. That's a way for me to let go of the struggle and see if something else comes easier. And I find that if I start over, it tends to be easier than if I have this thing. I'm like, well, I already wrote this thing. Let me work with this thing that I have. Throw it away, start over, and then let something else come the next 5 or 10 minutes. That's typically how I enjoy working and how I find that the work ends up being better.
But then are good ideas just exciting ideas?
For me, there has to be a certain amount of excitement to sustain the idea, because ideas are pretty fleeting and you can have a great one, but that's not really the hard part. The hard part is actually like doing the thing, and that tends to take some time. So it has to be something that will sustain you over time, which means it has to be exciting and interesting, and it has to, I think, spur your curiosity, because otherwise it will just become tedious, and tedium kind of kills most ideas. There's going to be times in that development process where you're not like thrilled, but in general, you have to remain excited about what you're doing, I think, in order for it to pull you through. Otherwise, you will just end up giving up on it, or you'll struggle with it so much that it'll show in the product. You'll take shortcuts. You'll just skip out on quality. You won't care. You're just then at some point just aiming to finish it. And I think when that's the case, you can see these blunt edges start to form. This isn't really a sharp idea anymore. It's just this dull thing that they just had to finish. At least that's how it comes to me when I'm thinking about these sorts of things.
Will you guys only ever build products that you can be a user of yourself?
Yes. So we only build things that we need or we want to exist in the world. And the first version of anything that we build is our version. So we don't ask people what they want. We don't run it by customers to see what they think. We don't ask people what they're willing to pay for it. First version is, what do we want to make for ourselves? And we're tough customers of our own work, so we want to make something really, really good. Then we put it out there on the market. And then when it's on the market, then we hear from people. Then we hear real feedback, because people are using it then in their real environment and paying for it with their real money. If it doesn't cost anyone anything to say yes or no, like, I don't want to hear it. Because if someone, would you pay $99 a month for this? Sure. Well, if you don't have to lay out $99 a month, that answer means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. In fact, it can be highly misleading. So I'd rather just put something out there on the market and see what actually happens, and then iterate and adjust from there if we need to, or double down on it, or whatever it might be. But I don't really believe in asking people what they want before something exists. Once it exists and it lands and people interface with it in the real world, you will hear really good feedback from them, and then we can adjust as you go at that point.
Do you think it would be a better world in which that's the only kinds of product that are being built from people who are actually users of it?
I think that's a really good question. My experience is, so I don't think that's going to be possible, but my experience is that the products that are clearly made by people who want those products are the best products. There's an intangible level of detail and consideration. Perhaps it's not intangible, perhaps it's tangible, actually. But it's subtle, let's say. There's a level of detail and quality and consideration and thoughtfulness that comes from people who are building the thing that they want, and they understand the thing so well that they make really thoughtful decisions. They tend to make really thoughtful decisions that are delightful. You just sort of realize those things as you're using it and go, wow, they really thought of that. Wow, what a clever thought. And this dial feels really good because it was built by someone who's going to use this dial, not someone who's just like, I need to find a parts supplier who makes dials and needs to be this certain, dimension. Okay, and made out of this material, fine. But how does that dial feel? That's something that someone who cares will dial this in, to dial in the dial. And you see that, I think, in a lot of different software products and hardware products and all sorts of different products. So I enjoy using products built by people who are connoisseurs of those things. But I don't think it's always possible. But I think it tends to be better, and I tend to seek out those kind of products personally.
Cool. Let's add a question here. Karam Haku asked, do Basecamp and HEY have North Star metrics you try to optimize?
Not really. Not metrics. They have feelings. Not like the products feel something, but we have feelings about the product, right? Yeah. I mean, ultimately, things need to be profitable. So that's our thing. That's the only thing we're really ultimately focused on a metrics perspective. And also there's performance numbers in terms of speed and responsiveness, but not in terms of, we don't look at like customer growth counts. And we know what our conversion rates are, but we're not measuring against something that we're trying to hit. We're never trying to hit a number. We are trying to be profitable. But we want the products to feel a certain way. We want the reception to feel a certain way. And that means that there's many things we will say no to in our products. So even if we can hit a certain metrics that's made up, there might be ways to hit some number if we did this or that. But if it doesn't feel right for the product, we're not going to do this or that. So that's kind of how we tend to think about it. But we're not looking at a dashboard. of numbers. We are sometimes curious about numbers, and we'll look at a number, but we're not driven by that. And I've been planning on writing about something like this. This will probably be controversial to some. I don't believe there's anything that's data driven. A lot of people talk about data. I think at the end of the day, and if a computer's making the decision, then it's data driven. If a human is making a decision and they're looking at numbers, they're looking at a dashboard, they're looking at numbers, but a human's asked to make a decision about those numbers, then it's intuition. It's still an intuitive decision that's being made. It's being informed, but if it's not just the numbers making the decision, there's still a human, and the last step in the decision is the human making the call. It's still an intuition-driven decision. It's intuitive. I think that's something that's a good thing to recognize. And again, if the decision is purely outsourced to something that's purely rational, and humans are not rational, then it would be truly data-driven. It can be data-informed. It can be data-influenced. But it's not a data-driven decision if a human being makes it.
So you don't have growth goals?
No. We just want to be profitable. I want to be profitable.
Do you want a certain profit margin, like 20%, like 50%?
We like to stay in a general range. So this is the other thing. It's a range. Everything's a range for us. So I'm not going to share our margins necessarily, but they're quite high. They're double digits, and they're in a certain range. We feel good if they're in this kind of range. Sometimes one year they might drop a bit because we invest a little bit more over here. One year they might be more because we cut costs over here, or we have more growth over here. It's about it's again a feeling. What feels about right for us? What are we comfortable with? And are we comfortable sacrificing some margin for a few years for this reason? Are we comfortable doing these things? It's never a number. It's not like it's got to be 28%. And if it's 27%, we're going to be upset. And if it's 29%, we're going to cheer. It's a range. How does it feel? And that's how we're driven, truly. We're just driven in general, I would say, versus being driven specifically.
I feel like your writing skills are underappreciated. I think you're probably the best business copywriter or copywriter, one of the best that I know for sure. You wrote about that you would want to teach a writing class, and it consists of giving people a topic and they write about it in 3 pages, then in 1 page, then in 3 paragraphs, then in 1 paragraph, and then in 1 sentence. Talk to me about the idea behind why that would be the writing course.
I try to write like I speak. I think that's one of the things that more people should try. And I think people would become better writers if they just wrote like they spoke versus trying to write. So I think when you try to write, I think people overdo it. So that's my little approach. What I think was important about that class idea, and this is not just about writing necessarily, it's about pretty much anything. It's about revision. But the writing class specifically is helping people become better editors. And cutting things down and being able to sort of summarize and be more concise. And it's not always better. It's not always that, one line is better than a paragraph. Sometimes you need the additional detail in certain things to make it more colorful and more expressive. But oftentimes, shorter can be better. It's just a good challenge, I think. I think the other thing that's important is that, and this is not really taught enough, I don't think, which is boiling something down and not losing too much of the essence. And then there's a point where you go too far. But I remember in school, for example, where it's like you're supposed to write a 10-page paper or a 5-page paper. There's this like minimum that's put out there. And I just think it'd be more useful to write 4 versions of that paper for the student, primarily, not for the teacher grading it, but for the student to really go through the process of writing something and writing something shorter and writing something shorter and writing something shorter, because it just helps you really figure out how to concentrate this idea, which is, especially in this day and age, it's a lot, I think, more important to be concise. Now, granted, here I am rambling about this answer, which you can see the power of brevity. I'm not using it right now. But anyway, that's my general feeling. I think that'd be more valuable for people.
Is it true that you write all the, you guys just announced once, there was this memo basically of why you created it. Is that written by you?
Yes, I wrote that.
What's your process for writing this? Because there was one for Hey, what's your process for writing these? I
have to be excited to say something, first of all. It's very hard for me to write something that I think is good if I don't really care about it, which is why I hated writing in school. I don't like to write about topics that someone tells me to write about. It's got to be this nugget. There's got to be this spark of an idea. So when we launch something new, we tend to announce it with a sort of a manifesto style letter first, right? Just to get the excitement. And I've been meaning to record a walkthrough of the once, so once.com, if people are curious about it, to like a walkthrough about what was going through my head, why I structured it the way I structured it. So I will do that. I've been meaning to do that for a while. I don't have an outline. I tend to start with a thought and then let it unfold. Let it sort of unwrap from there. And again, if it tends to be a struggle, I'll just stop and throw it out and start again. The once one felt great to me. Like I wrote it in 10 minutes. I've edited it, a bunch after that. But like the gist of it, 95% of it was written in 10 minutes, and that's how I know it's going to be good. It's emotional. There's energy behind it. I mean every word. I know sometimes I go a bit 10% too far on some of the ideas, and I like that. And the same thing was true for the Hey letter, which is at the bottom of hey.com. If you scroll down, it's still there. It's a feeling. Again, I'm trying to express a feeling. I'm not trying to market something. I'm not trying to explain something. I'm trying to express a feeling about something. And I think that comes through in the words. And I find that when it veers away from a feeling, and then it becomes too clinical or too formal, and that bores me. And when I'm bored, I don't write well. So it's got to hold my interest. I have to hold my own interest is kind of a good way of putting this too. I'm writing something that I want to read. That's another way to think about it.
What's your relationship to feedback? Like when you wrote it, do you send it over to like DHH and then he's like, nah, I don't like this sentence, like, or do you just like, this is what it is, I don't care what DHH says? Like,
it depends. So like blog posts, I don't get feedback on, but that kind of thing, David and I'll write the first draft. I'll send to David for his thoughts. He'll give me some feedback. Some of it I'll take, some of it I'll leave. I'll send him another draft. We'll kind of go back and forth a few times, but we don't belabor it, So that was I wrote that in 10 minutes. I played around with it some more, sent it to him the next day. He gave me a little bit of feedback. I played with it for, I don't know, a few more minutes, tweaked a sentence or something. We do this all in Basecamp. And then it's done. And then I find that the more you work it, the worse it gets at some point. So I think it's important to just like, play with it for a while and get it out there. The same thing was true with the Hey letter. With Hey, I actually worked with another employee who's not here anymore. A fellow named James kind of gave me some really good feedback along the way on that one. But I don't like pass it by 6 or 7 people. It's usually one person.
And then when they say like this sentence, I don't like it, do you like listen to them, or is it just like if it resonates with you, then you incorporate it? But if you disagree with their criticism, it's just you don't.
I try to understand where they're coming from. It's not like sometimes they'll suggest a sentence, and it's not like I'm going to copy and paste that sentence. Although sometimes I will. I'm like, oh, that's great. That's exactly what I was trying to say. I couldn't say it. But it's like, oh yeah, I see your point there, or whatever. And then sometimes I go, not feeling it. So like asking for feedback is not about taking feedback. It's asking for feedback. And some of that feedback moves you, modifies you. Some of it does not. But when you ask for it, you're going to get something back, and then it's up to you still as the chef to decide if the dish needs more salt or not, or you should use oregano instead of marjoram. Like it's still your dish. You've got to figure that out in the end. Someone might tell you what they think, and you might agree, but it's still on you at the end. Because
I promised people. Greg Larkin asked, are there any industry which should be bootstrapped and other industries which should be VC backed? Yeah, certainly. And look, I want to be clear about this. Like when I'm railing against VC, like there are plenty of places where investments make sense. I think though, for a lot of software businesses, which is the world I live in, and consulting businesses and very low capital intensive businesses, more money means more problems. It doesn't mean more solutions. But if you're going to be building a car or an airplane, or you're going to be building homes, or you're going to be building physical objects, or you're going to open a restaurant, or, and there's real capital expenditures here, or tool and die costs, or machine costs, or
factory costs or raw material costs. Like, if you need 33 ounces of gold because you need to make something out of gold, like you got to come up with the money for that. So whether or not that you need millions of dollars is another question. I think some people end up taking far too much money. They should kind of right size the money they need to get them a little ways versus taking a lot of money, which then requires them to do things they don't need to do, like hire a bunch of people and spend a bunch of money on marketing, that sort of thing. But absolutely, there are lots of businesses that require investment, but the vast majority of all businesses on this planet do not get a penny from anybody. So let's keep that in mind, that the most mainstream thing there is to figure out how to figure it out yourself. That is what most people are left with. Most people have no choice. No one's going to pay them a penny for anything. They're going to have to figure it out themselves. So I'm on the side of that, which is almost all businesses. If you pay attention to Twitter and LinkedIn, you think everyone's raising money. Basically, no one's raising money in the world. And if they are, it's from family that's going to give them a few bucks because that's all they've got. Like, most companies are bootstrapped. So that is actually the norm.
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of bastardized the idea of VC backing. I mean, it's called a startup because you get money to start up an idea with the goal to get it running and profitable as soon as possible, and not to go through the alphabet in terms of funding rounds. Drew Corbett asked, have you seen growing enthusiasm for data privacy and non-subscription products based on the inception and warm feedback for HEY? Do you see this as a single market outlier, part of a future niche, or even a sizable future market with multiple players? Privacy is an important thing, but it's a niche. It's not a massive driver. I mean, there's certain companies like DuckDuckGo who've built a good business. I use DuckDuckGo. I think Apple's built Apple's built a great business in a lot of things, but privacy is a cornerstone of their business as well. Browsers like Firefox and Brave, and there's some things like that, right? But I think most people just either don't know or don't care about it really. And you can see that in just usage patterns in social media specifically and whatnot. Like, they're very comfortable sharing a bunch of stuff about themselves because in the end of the day, they feel like they're provided a better service when companies know more about them. Or they don't even realize what they're giving up, but they don't really care. I think that's just the world we live in. So I think it's a small corner of the market. I think there's certainly plenty of people who use HEY for that reason, but I don't think it's a primary reason at all. It's a reason that resonates with some, and some very, very strongly. So I think those customers are they're very much all in on privacy, and some people care a little bit about it. But the ones that are all in, and there's enough of them. Again, the interesting thing about all this stuff is people always talk about market share and how big the market is. Market's plenty big if your costs are really low. That's the thing. It's like if your costs are really high, you need more market share. Like we were talking about some of our competitors earlier. They've got thousands of employees. That's a huge monthly nut in salaries and benefits. And so they've got to get a big market share. They got to go after the whales to pay for that. We have 80 people, Our costs are not what their costs are. So the size of business we can build on that is quite big for us. It might be very small for them, but it's wonderful for us. It's incredible for us because our costs are low. So a product line that like HEY might be thrown out. Let's say Google launched HEY. HEY's business, which is multi-million-dollar business, would be an abject failure if Google launched it or if someone else launched it, because it wouldn't cover their costs. They would put hundreds of people on it, and all the structure they have and the requirements that they have to make something successful for them are different than us. So success and market share is not something that you need to compare to others. The only thing that matters is, does it work for you? Does it make sense for you? The most important thing I think people should stop doing is comparing themselves to others. It doesn't matter because other companies have different cost structures, different business models, different requirements. All you need to worry about is, does it make sense for you and yours? That's what matters. So that's why a privacy-driven business, let's say, could be successful if you don't need to get 600,000 people to sign up for it. Maybe you need
8,000 people paying a certain amount of money, which would be, again, a huge failure for many companies. But for you, if you have 7 people, it could be incredibly lucrative. So you got to look at it that way.
What are your favorite things to read?
I'm primarily a nonfiction reader. I like science stuff. I'm curious about the mind.
Which books have you read the most times?
I don't think I've ever read a book more than once. I don't finish most books either. I get like, I don't know, 3/4 of the way through or something. I feel like I've got it. Or like half the way through. I'm like, that's probably enough. I do like to listen. I find myself finishing more books that I listen to than I actually read these days for whatever reason.
You mentioned feeling a couple of times. The way that you build products is that it needs to have a certain feeling. When you write, you're looking for a certain feeling. It seems like the prerequisite for that needs to be that you need to be in touch with your feelings, trust your feelings. Are there anything that you do to like get in touch with your feelings, trust your feelings?
First of all, I wouldn't tell other people to be that way. Like, this is just what works for me, right? And I just realized that in order for me to do good work, I need to feel up for it. I need to feel into it. I need to feel good about it. I mean, I can plod through and you know, like go through the slog and get stuff done if I have to. You know, sometimes some days are like that, but that's not going to sustain me over the long term. It needs to feel right. I think just generally building your awareness and paying attention to the things that make you feel a certain way is just a good skill in general. You know, I think it'll serve you well in all.
Have you always been good at it, or?
I think I've always been driven by intuition and feel. I don't think I've always been necessarily aware of that fact. Perhaps getting older and practicing and meditate and, you know, some things like that can help me be a bit more aware of things and sort of detach from the thing itself and sort of to notice what it does to me. Has been helpful, but I've always been driven by intuition. I don't like to look at numbers. I'm not a numbers-driven person, never have been. I don't really like them, frankly, actually at all very much. I tend to try to work backwards. Like, let me make something great and figure out how to make it work versus like, how am I going to make this work? What do I need to build to make this work? I'd rather build the thing and then figure out how to make it work.
I feel like that's where the 40-hour work week comes in too, because I feel like when I have these super long days and I have back-to-back meetings and emails and this and that, like I'm numb afterwards. But the days where I have an empty schedule and there's nothing there, like that's when you're creative and can feel into what you're doing. Those
are the best days. So I love empty schedules. I don't like to book things far in advance. I don't really, frankly, like to book things more than a few days in advance. I like open schedules. I like big, expansive stretches of space and time. I don't like chunked up days. Yesterday was kind of a shitty day for me. I had like 4 back-to-back things. We record our podcast on Tuesday mornings, and that's usually an hour. And then David and I get together with Elaine, who's our COO, and we get together for an hour. And then I had another call for that, which was an hour. And to be honest, at that point, my day's wrecked. If I have 3 hours of calls, like it's just over. My afternoon's going to be terrible. It just is. And I, you know, 1 day a week is typically like that for me. The rest of my weeks are very, very open. And this again is a feeling. When I look at my calendar and I see an open day, I feel better. I'm going to do better work. If I go, oh, this day's like chunked up. I got this and then that, and then a little bit of space and then this and then that. Horrible. So the reason we're able to get so much work done at our company, though, is because we don't have things that are structural in our calendars that are chunking up our days. We don't have required meetings. We're not meeting all the time. We're not, you know, it's not back to back to back to back to back. There can be a day like that here and there, but that's not the norm. The norm is you've got 8 hours to yourself. Figure out how to use it. That's most people's days here.
What are some non-obvious reasons why you and David work seemingly so well together?
It's hard for me to answer that because I'm so close to it. I'm not sure what's obvious, what isn't. But I would say a couple things. That we do very different things is very important. So David's technical, I'm on the design side. We both see business pretty much eye to eye for the most part. But we're not in each other's business all the time. If we were both programmers, I think it'd be harder. If we were both designers, I think it'd be harder. So it's good that we're both doing different things, but we have a center path that's about the same. I won't speak for him, but I have deep admiration for his skills. So I would hope he would feel the same way about me, but I'll let him say that or not say that. I feel like it's very important to admire your partner and really have a deep respect for what they're able to do. And I sit there sometimes in awe of the amount of things that David's able to do and to do well and how he does it. And I think that's an important thing to keep a partnership alive for a long time. If you don't really admire or respect or think the other person's kind of pulling their weight or doing their thing, you can sustain that for a little bit on sheer will, but at some point it's going to lead to resentment. And that's, I think, where a lot of partnerships fall apart. Marriages, relationships, business, all that stuff. It's when resentment creeps in, you're in deep trouble. And I think so. Anything you can do to avoid that, I think, is probably one of the best ways to keep something together.
How do you avoid it?
How do you avoid resentment? I think part of it is like when you're not in each other's business, that helps. Because if you're constantly second guessing each other, there's a point where you're like, I don't want to ask this person for their thoughts anymore because it's just going to lead to a fight or it's going to devolve into something. So I think staying away from each other is a good thing. I almost never see David. David and I lived in the same city for a long time. Then for the past few years, we lived 9 time zones apart. And now we're back in the same city again. David's been back in the same city as me for, I don't know, like 3 or 4 months now. I think I've seen him twice. Like we're not in each other's business very often, you know? We talk often during the day in different formats and in different ways, but we do our own things, and then we come together when we need to, and then otherwise we're just kind of doing our own thing. And I think that always helps too.
Do you feel like it's better or worse if co-founders hang out privately, personally? I
don't have a lot of counterfactual experience here. I think it depends on the people. I think David and I both appreciate our space. And the ability for us just to go heads down and do our thing without having to check in with each other all the time. But I think other people are different. So I don't know. I think if I was in the same office as someone all the time for many years and like had to deal with someone all the time, I think it'd be hard. Because you do have to deal with other human beings. Even if you like them, you got to deal with them because we're all difficult. And so it's kind of nice to sometimes keep the difficulties away. Now, I know some people who've been in business for a long time who are very friendly and you know, I'm friendly with David, but we don't hang out. If you're hanging out all the time, I don't know. In some ways, it creates more moments of collision, and I'm not so sure that's always a healthy thing. But again, I don't know. That's just been my experience.
We have 2 minutes left, so you need to give a concise answer. You guys launched once. Is the SaaS model dying?
No, SaaS is not dying, but I think there needs to be an alternative. I think what's unfortunate is that if you want to buy software today, basically there's only one way to buy it, which is you can't buy it. You can rent it in perpetuity. I think there needs to be some options.
Are you going to switch Basecamp and HEY? Are those going to be the first products, like a buy once Basecamp?
No, Basecamp and HEY are remaining SaaS tools. They make sense as those kinds of things. The things that are going to be once products are radically simple products that are, well, you'll see soon, but are basically what we're essentially looking at are what products have become commodities that are still priced as luxuries. And how can I radically simplify those things and deliver them like kind of almost dead simple generic versions of those things at a vastly reduced price that people only have to pay for once. And if you start to think about, once you see the first product, you'll go, oh yeah, people are paying ridiculous amounts of money for that thing. There's no reason for that anymore. Gosh.
Thank you so much for your time, Jason. You scheduled this quite a bit in advance, which you hate. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, anytime.
And
happy to do it again.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
All right, bye-bye.